Hello, everybody. Welcome to Mama Mondays. I am Hannah the Kombucha Mama, and I am so excited to share this guest with you here today, my dear friend, Leah Segedie of Mamavation. Welcome, Leah.
Thank you so much for having me, Hannah. I'm honored to be here.
Well, I feel like we've known each other forever, but I want to say maybe it's only been 10 years, 8 years. I can't remember exactly, but I feel like we met for the first time in person at Blog Her in Chicago. Does that sound right?
Yeah, probably. Blog Her in Chicago was like about 8 or 10 years ago, I think exactly.
Yeah, exactly right. And so, and even though we're both in California, for whatever reason, I met you there. And I just would love for people to get to know you a little bit more and talk about, your experience and what you're doing. So first, let's talk about what Mamavation does, and then let's dive into some of the background on that. So, and then we'll talk about Blog Her Food too, as well. But before we go there, just what do you do? What is Mamavation?
So Mamavation is a website. We've been around for, I want to say 11 years now. And I've been in the space for well over 15 years in social media, blogging and doing all kinds of things. But Mamavation has been official for 10 years. So we're a consumer watchdog community. So essentially, we target brands that sell and market to women. We look at categories of all kinds of different products and then evaluate those products based on ingredients that would be hormone disrupting. So if you go to our website, you can find everything from the best lotions to the best shampoo. We literally go out, find every single product we can find, and then rank it bad, better, best to make it really easy for women based on hormone disrupting chemicals. But we're also known to even dig into the plasticizers and the packaging, because the packaging is what gets into your food that they don't tell you about. So we're really famous for looking into those types of things as well. It's also a community that you can find us on Facebook. We're really like I call us a light green, non-judgmental community, because like pretty much anything goes wherever you're at in the green realm. It's kind of like that understanding is that we're all important because we're all pushing forward to something. But when you come in and you're a newbie, it's that understanding that it doesn't matter, where you're at. You're going to find sisters that are way ahead of you and people that are in your exact area. And we're just wanting to help you, support you in your realm, what you're doing right now, not push it too hard, not push it too slow, but go as you wish. I also have a book that came out 2 years ago, 2 years or 3 years ago. I feel like it's been forever. COVID's gone like crazy. Green Enough. And Green Enough came about because essentially we're doing all these category investigations, and I literally covered everything in your home from, things that you can, like your flooring to your personal care products, to your food, to like anything that you would purchase. And so we wrapped it up in a book. I cuss like a sailor. So there's a lot of that in this book. And it was funny because originally this was a Rodell book. So this was literally the last published book by Rodell. And I was in the interim going from Rodell to Penguin. So officially it's Penguin and Rodell. Penguin comes in and says, the 4-letter words, let's knock it down a bit. So they took some of that out, but I still got most of it in here. But I figured, the way I am is just the way I am. And you read this and you get my personality, because I swear like a sailor in the group. And that's just how I am. And I do that because it helps me with my frustration, because when you do what you do what I do, and I feel like my role is to help women make the best decisions possible, and also pressuring those companies that are really not doing anything good for us in the long run. And as those bad companies lose market share and it goes to those good companies, the good companies grow, the bad companies change. And I take full credit for our community having a lot to do with that, because that's who we are. And, that's why I say, like, you come in here as a newbie, you come in as like a deep green person, and it doesn't matter, because the deep green women are more like the mentors, and the light green women reach the tipping point consumers. So you have friends that we don't have access to. And that's how you grow the big tent. So that's kind of what Mamavation is about.
Well, and I really love what you're saying. So I'm just going to digest it a little for those who are watching. So basically green in the sense of like environmentally friendly. And what I love about what you do is it's grassroots and it's hitting them in the pocketbook, because you know, to be honest, I feel it's ethically irresponsible to be using these chemicals. And yet the company's contention is, oh, but there's not a law against it. And that to me is the lamest excuse in the book. Just because there isn't a law, you therefore feel entitled to poison your consumer. Like, it makes no sense, right? But this is the world we live in. And so it's really important that we're hitting them in the pocketbook. And when we do that in a concerted way, and you've also done petition campaigns, you help get BPA out of the Target receipts. And, you know, there's a lot of different things that you've been behind the scenes on orchestrating. You know, you have a history of being an organizer, but to your point that no matter where you are in your exploration of understanding how toxic our world is, and so whether that's from the beauty products, from cooking products, from cleaning supplies, to the food you eat, to period underwear, right? Like, you know, something that goes up against a very permeable part of our bodies. And, you know, we don't want to allow that to be a place where we're transmitting poisons to ourselves. So I really respect all of the work that you do, but give us a little bit of your history. Like, how did you get into being such a political activist, so to speak?
Oh, wow. So activism, I feel like I was doing that when I was a kid. And I literally was doing activism when I was in high school. Different subjects, though, different time. But okay, so I have a master's degree in communication management from USC. When I was a bachelor's, I graduated top of my class. And so they brought me in and basically handed me a free master's degree, you know, to hang out and teach for them. So that was great. I cut my teeth in politics. So I didn't do activism. I was actually working for more conservative members, moderate Republicans in California. So that's how I got my start. And I worked for the California State Assembly for about 2-3 years. I did fundraising and all kinds of organization and different things. And then my life basically changed. And it changed because there was a lot of people in my life that got sick and died of cancer. And my dad was one of them. He got mesothelioma from exposure to asbestos at work. And 10-15 years later, he passed away. When this happened, and we found out, they basically gave him a couple months to live. And, you know, I was actually pregnant with my first baby at the time. And I was just like, oh, hell no. And I quit my job and took care of my father and my mom. She was kind of sick as well. So I took care of both of them and just watched the slow progression of someone who died from cancer. And then when my dad died, it just ripped my heart open, you know, and it took me several years to kind of get through that. But basically what happened is, you know, I dedicated my life to health and wellness. And I dedicated my life to helping people not have to go through what I went through. After my dad died, my uncle died. I had another uncle that died. I had an aunt that died. It was just, we had this big, humongous extended family with huge family reunions of like 40-45 people. And it went from that down to a little tiny thing. And it really impacted my life. So at the same time that all these people are dying, I started up an online business, and it was called, at the time it was called bookyboo.com. So if you go on Twitter, you'll see me as Bookyboo, and I still haven't changed that. But that was like the first basic website that went after moms in particular. And it was just about health, wellness, and weight loss and stuff like that. And we had niched ourselves during a time when mom blogging wasn't niche. So we were like niching within a niche. And at the time I lost a lot of weight after my pregnancy. It was like 120 pounds or something like that. And it was just basically me wanting to showcase, you know, better decisions for my children so that they didn't have to go through the struggles that our family did. And so when I first got into the industry, I thought weight loss was the shiznaz, you know, I thought that was everything, you know. And after the years went by and we had created this big, huge community, we were working with people from The Biggest Loser. We were working with all these brands. We had operated this big weight loss, online weight loss campaign. And oh my gosh, I think we were like at, I would say like 120 million, you know, impressions or something like that on Twitter in a year. You know, it was this humongous thing, and it went on for a while. And I started to notice something during these campaigns. And what I noticed was something called obesogens. And these are chemicals that you can be, that can be in your everyday life. They impact your metabolism, they impact your weight, and they have nothing to do with calories. And so I was kind of like, what? So I started like digging into the research. I spoke with a lot of the scientists that did the research so I could learn as much as I could about it. And they were really excited to talk to me because I had a big audience. And I was really interested in this work because it just sidelined with what I was doing. And it really taught me that there's something else going on in this world and this environment that has way more to do with calories intake. It has way more to do with how much you're walking or sweating or what have you. And once I learned that, I just couldn't unlearn it. And it just clicked in my mind because of all the cancer that I had been around in my life. It just clicked that I needed to look into this. And really my intuition said, go down this road. No one's there. You got to figure it out. Get as many advisors as you possibly can. And that's what I did. So I went down that road. I talked to as many scientists as I could, advisors, people at NGOs, learned as much as I could learn. And it kind of started me on a new path to green wellness, or I would say eco wellness is kind of how I call it, where, you look at consumer products in terms of hormone disrupting chemicals and how that impacts fertility, how that impacts your metabolism, how that impacts cancer at the end of your life. But all these things can be happening based on the products and the food that you're purchasing. So, as I'm going
let's
down
just pause
this
right
road,
there.
yeah.
I want to tell people, so this is what frustrates me when people go, oh, it's calories in, calories out. It is not. It is the quality of the food products here, especially in the United States. Again, the frustrating thing is you have big food companies that sell their products in Europe without the toxic chemicals, without those things, because Europe has more stringent standards. And yet here in the United States, we're allowed to just put chemical obesogens, all these things into the food. And then we shame people. We say, you're fat because you don't work out enough. You're fat because you overeat. Ignoring the fact they put addictive chemicals into our food, ignoring the fact that our food is depleted of nutrients. And I truly see obesity in the United States as malnutrition, right? Really what's happening is you have all these labels on foodstuffs, right? Every permutation of wheat, corn, and soy, plus flavorizers and chemicals and this and that. And we don't have enough nutrients. And so the body's in a starvation mode. And the reason why it's hanging on to all of that, and then not to mention that then you sequester these chemicals into your fat cells so they bioaccumulate over time. So you end up having the worst possible, chemical shitstorm, to use some of that sailor language. And our body simply can't handle it. And I think this is sort of what we're seeing, then comes along a pandemic, and now so many people are at risk because we don't have a good foundation to begin with. And, I really love how your work educates people. It's unfortunate we have to do it from the bottom up, but this is what it's going to take in order for people to learn this and to put that pressure on the company so they quit doing it. And I know I interrupted you, but I also wanted to ask about going to DC and standing up. I think it was like GMO labeling. And then of course I want to hear about your McDonald's experience in their stockholder meeting. So you've just been such a voice behind the scenes for those who don't know you, but hopefully now more people will know who you are and know your work. So I don't know if you can pick up the story where we left off or where that makes sense.
Yeah. So, as I was growing in social media, I was also creating a blogger, what is it called? I can't even think. So I have 10,000 bloggers and so I work with 10,000
network
bloggers. No, thank you very much. Well, I don't even know the name of my own thing. I need more coffee today. So I created a blogger network. It's about 10,000 influencers, and most of them were, light green mom bloggers, wellness, people that are interested in those types of things. So as kind of like the backbone of my activism. So, I didn't create it for activism, but of course everybody knows me. I'm going to dip in and ask, for help for certain things that are like that. So we did that. I've been working with brands for many years that are, green, wellness, and health wise. And so I've been using and utilizing that community, for things that, I wanted to affect change in. So we'll back up a little bit and we'll talk about McDonald's. All the activism that I get involved in is very personal to me. And so my oldest son, he got a coupon from school for McDonald's for free French fried hamburger or something like that because he improved in math. And I was like, what? No! Why are you getting this? It made me so mad. I started talking on, Facebook right away about it. And this NGO got a hold of me, and they were going to the McDonald's shareholder meeting. And I was like, I want to go. So I went with them to the McDonald's shareholder meeting, and I got up, grabbed the microphone, and gave the CEO a piece of my mind, and made national news telling him, stop marketing to my son in his public school. How dare you? I don't want him eating your hamburgers and fries. And how dare you do this to the other parents? And I promise you there's more parents that are upset about this. So that made national news. Well, the second year I decided to go again. And the funny thing is, they knew I was coming. They knew I had made national news, and they were freaked out at this happening. So this time they tried to intimidate me. They got a special scarlet sticker. They put it on me when I checked in, and they had an armed guard, not joking, an armed guard followed me around the entire room during the shareholder meeting. And even though that guy was there intimidating me, I still got the microphone. I still picked it up. I still gave them a piece of my mind, and I still made national news. So forget you guys and your armed guards. The third year I tried to go, they actually made it so that you had to have an actual share to get in the room. I didn't have shares. I was holding a proxy from somebody else's share. So they changed all of the rules to keep people like me out of that room and keep us away from the national press. So there's McDonald's right there. Okay, what's the other one? Target.
Then did you go buy some shares so now you can go?
I actually have 3 shares now. So yes, I can go if I want to. So I did make it so that they couldn't keep me out forever, but it did take me a couple years. Like when they first did that the first year, I was like, oh my God, but when Robin Hood came around, Robin Hood made it so I could buy a share.
There you go. But what I love is your
tenacity.
You're tenacious, like you're not going to be intimidated. The scarlet letter, like Hester Prynne, right, trying to, they don't understand how rooted you are in your passion and your commitment to what you're doing. Like you said, this is so personal for you. And I think that when we connect into what personally motivates us, we have so much more strength than people might give us credit for. And so I really love that commitment, standing up in those rooms and saying those things. And I know you did that on Capitol Hill as well. I can't remember exactly. It was about organic gardens or GMOs, but I just really love.
It's all based
on
pesticides.
Exactly right.
Based on pesticides. Yeah. So we were okay. God, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was with Mega Food. Mega Food brought us up there. We were talking about.
I feel like Michelle Obama was there, right?
Well, that was another time I went to DC. So that time I went to DC. This is another one. I was actually talking to a girlfriend about this the other day, and she's laughing at me. So Michelle Obama had brought in about 100 mom bloggers to DC and invited us in for a luncheon and all kinds of stuff about her food program, her school lunches, and all get work in, lose weight, get exercise, and all that stuff. I ironically was the only green mom invited to the whole party. And so it was kind of funny. And I showed up, and of course I had questions. And so I got up, and asked them about obesogenic chemicals that are in the food, that are in the packaging, that are leaching into the food. And these chemicals are linked to obesity. Hey, how do you have fat babies who haven't even had a morsel of food yet? How is that possible? We got a problem here, and we need to start talking about this. What do you think about obesogenic chemicals and packaging and those kind of things? And why aren't you talking about that? And like everyone on the stage was just like white, like they're looking around. They're like, who brought her? Who invited this woman to the party?
That's awesome though.
There's 100 mom bloggers in there. 50% of them hated me for my question. 50% of them loved me for my question. So love me or hate me, I'm here to stay. So that was probably, I was not invited back the following year, but I don't think they had it the following year, to be quite honest. But who knows, maybe I'll get invited to the White House again one day. But if I do, I will be asking some tough questions.
Well, and this is what I love about your tough questions, because Blog Her, just to circle back to that story, Blog Her was this kind of innovative conference where female bloggers from around the world would come together and talk about, how to improve our blogs as businesses. But then they got a lot of corporate interest. And I remember that year because I was really ticked off by it too. But Coca-Cola was the fitness sponsor. It just seemed like, what? How is Coca-Cola equivalent with fitness? Like, anyone who's trying to get in shape should not be drinking soda of any stripe, regardless of calorie content, etc. So it just really was like a real dissonant response. And that inspired you to do your own conference, I believe.
So I noticed this whole thing going on with Blog Her, and obviously as a wellness blogger, this pissed me the you know what off, right? And I reached out to Blog Her and I'm like, what does Coca-Cola have to do with wellness? Why are they your wellness sponsor? And they just didn't respond to me. So I'm like, all right, okay, I'll throw a Twitter party. So I threw a Twitter party and we trended on Twitter internationally, basically asking Blog Her, what does Coca-Cola have to do with wellness, right? And they still ignored us. But you know who didn't ignore us was ABC News. And ABC News, they did have to respond to and say, this is what it has to do, or blah, 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 blah. So when I actually went to Blog Her, I was fully expecting them to kick me out of the conference. And they didn't. They didn't even like do anything about it. But as I got into the floor, what I noticed is that Coca-Cola had the biggest, hugest, like, you know, expo booth. And they were asking people to do jumping jacks and then literally handing them Coca-Cola products, like a Coke or whatever. And I was just kind of like, oh my God. And so later in the event, there was an event, another event that was like hosted by Healthy Child, Healthy World, which was an NGO I was working with and was supporting, and got all the green bloggers and wellness bloggers together. And so we started talking after the event. We were at the bar, of course, and we were drinking, and I think there was like 20 of us or something like that. And we were saying, how is this possible that this happens? Why is it that they were allowed to ignore us? And what the heck? What does wellness have to do with Coca-Cola? How do we stop these things from happening? And I just very innocently said, you know, if we had our own conference, we could draw the line in the sand and define for them what wellness was. And then when Blog Her did wellness stuff, it would be in pale comparison to what we did. We could get all the best brands. We could do all the best stuff. We could have all the best speakers. So they look at me and they're like, okay, Leah, when are you going to plan this conference? And I'm like, no, I wasn't volunteering. That's not what this was. This wasn't a volunteer. This was just an idea. And they looked at me and they're like, well, who else is going to do it? You already have the network. You already have the bloggers. You already have all the NGOs and all the speakers, and you know all the advisors. You're the only one that can do it. And I'm all like, oh, geez, I did kind of talk myself into that.
You did.
So you know what? I went home, I did a lot of studying on event planning, and I had in politics had planned a ton of big events, you know, so it's not like I was a virgin to this at all. You know, I wasn't new. I knew what it'd take, and it was a lot of hard work. And so I figured I might as well do it. So that's how the ShipCon social media conference came to be about. It was the first conference for green bloggers, green wellness bloggers. It was completely non-GMO. We had a lot of organic brands. Our first year, we sold out. We sold out of expo space. We sold out of tickets. There was a lot of incredible passion behind it. And, you know, the other thing that we had done is on the side, the bloggers that went to this conference we were organizing them to help label GMOs. And so I was the person behind the scenes organizing 650 bloggers across the United States and Canada to help with the effort of labeling GMOs in California, Colorado, Oregon, Vermont, the whole 9 yards. And it was funny though, we kept losing, and Monsanto and all of these companies kept throwing millions of dollars in. And I kept saying to myself and saying to my colleagues, I'm like, you understand that Monsanto is spending $40 million telling people there's something called a GMO in your food, but we're not going to tell you where it is. You realize that there's no win situation for them about that, right? That no matter what happens, if we lose the race, we're going to win the war. Well, that's exactly what happened. We lost the races, but we won the war. And the war was educating people about transparency in the food supply and things that are going on that you have no idea about. And that basically opened up the floodgates of people finding and eating more organic food, growing those brands, us being able to have access to all kinds of things, from safer personal care products to safer food, you know, better packaging, more organic and eco-friendly everything. And
we can even tie it back to, right, Monsanto, now purchased by Bayer, right? Because just because they changed their name doesn't mean they're any different.
Yeah,
having to pay.
Like, nobody wants to be called Monsanto. So
right. Well,
the name.
Then they had to have that.
Okay. So here's the story about Monsanto. So this is a crazy thing. So So Monsanto knows me very personally. Their director of communications used to talk shit about me at conferences and stuff like that. I have never talked to this lady. I've never tweeted at this lady. I don't know this lady from Adam, but they know me very well. Okay. And of course they know me because I was throwing all these Twitter parties. I was giving them a bad name. Everybody wants to label GMOs, blah, 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 blah. And so one day I get this phone call when I'm getting these texts from my friends, and I'm on vacation with my husband. So you know how you put your phone away and you're like, I am not going to look at my phone. It's all about you, honey. Well, it was going nuts. It was like, and it was like 20 texts and calls and all this stuff. And my husband's like, you may want to look at that just to see. And I look at it, and it's a picture. I have like 20 people sending me a snapshot, like a screenshot of a Monsanto application for bloggers. So what happened was Monsanto wanted a bunch of bloggers to talk about something that had nothing to do with GMOs, because they're getting so much crap about GMOs. They want to do something else. So they wanted to promote their hothouse cucumbers and peppers and this and that. And so they created this application form. They went through another network, not my network, obviously, but another network that
Well,
was
I think
like
Blogger
size.
Blogger was helping to host, curated events for Monsanto where they'd invite.
There's a lot. They've gone to a lot of places.
Yeah.
But question number 6 was, are you an avid fan of Mamavation? Literally asking people if they were friends with
Disqualified.
to get rid of, right. And so my friends were like, oh no, I'm just applying to see what's going to go on. You know what I mean? It was like the dumbest thing ever. And as they're doing this, I'm all like, at first I was like, what the fuck? This multi-billion dollar company is like calling me out in my kitchen, for crying out loud. And then I'm all like, thanks for making me infamous in front of 30,000 mom bloggers, guys, whatever. Just like,
no such thing as bad press.
Right. So that happened, I want to say, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. Oh geez, I have maybe 6. I don't know. So that was a trip.
Well, but I was going to say is that like all of this education, or all of this raising awareness, I mean, we're at the point where they're going to start phasing out Roundup finally, right? Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So the lawsuits,
it's so funny. Like everybody's saying, Leah, you should be celebrating. Like, I'm off to the new thing. I'm off to the new race.
Right.
And I'm like, oh great.
Done. Next.
But I'm off, and my biggest thing that I'm working on right now is PFAS chemicals, perfluorinated chemicals. Those are the forever chemicals. And
let's break down PFAS.
Okay. So it depends on who you're talking to.
Okay.
So based on who you're talking to, they will tell you there's either 4,200 of these chemicals or 9,200 of these chemicals, based on who you're talking to. And the reason there is confusion on how many is there's long chain versus short chain chemicals. So basically the long chain chemicals were the persistent ones that everyone found out about right away. This is Teflon on your pans, Gore-Tex in your clothing, the non-stick, those types of things. There were so many of these chemicals. And the thing is that they all have at least one atom of fluorine in them. And so they'll attach them to a carbon atom or a hydrogen atom. And based on how many different ways they do it, they categorize it this versus that. Well,
so
I don't care.
Fluorine is the natural version of fluoride. So fluoride is like an isotope of fluorine, right? That's the chemical version.
Yeah, it's a little complicated. So fluorine is a natural element. You will actually find it in the earth with some things, right? So it's actually, it's a real thing. The problem is they have synthesized it, right, and made it a synthetic chemical, and that's where they make it into the strongest bond known to man.
Well, that's Teflon, right? That's Gore-Tex
is like the strongest bond. You can't unbreak that. It's persistent. It's ubiquitous in the environment right now. And, basically the EPA and the FDA, all those guys were asleep at the wheel. And so now we have thousands of these chemicals in commerce, and they're only now realizing how bad it really is. And so what I do is I do a lot of testing. I'm testing a lot of products because, a product, these companies can say they're all well and good and all that stuff, but then they can put PFAS on things, on the fabrics, expose you in that way, and they don't have to tell you. There's no laws that force them to do any of these things. So as these chemicals have been out in commerce, the worst places that are impacted, you're exposed in water, food, and air, basically. So water being one of the worst places. If you live around a military base or an airport, your groundwater could be contaminated with PFAS. And the reason for that is it was in the foam, firefighting foam that they used. So when they created all those fires and made things go boom, you know, the firefighting foam that they used is what had PFAS in it. And that got down into the water table. So that's why military bases and places around that are just saturated, you know, and at factories and stuff like that, we're using PFAS.
And so the
also
PFAS,
airports,
once you absorb it, it can't leave your system?
for about 40 years. So they haven't tested all of them to know how long all of them stay in your body, but the ones that the most traditional ones, the ones that were the legacy chemicals, those stay in your body for 4 years and build up over time. So this isn't like something you pee out and don't worry about. This is a big deal. No, it doesn't go anywhere. There's no way to detox it out. I don't care what anyone says. There really is no way to detox this out. So, you know, that's something that's important that we all have to take stock in, you know, like, where is it? So when people ask me questions like, Leah, what's the safest period underwear? I'm like, I have no freaking clue. I got to test to find out. So that was one of the things that I was doing last year is I tested 19, or sorry, we've tested 19 now, 17 different period underwear products. And of those that we tested, we found that 65% of them had detectable fluorine, which is indicative of PFAS, either PFAS contamination or a lot of it intentionally added.
And I think how they're skirting around, well, and the reason you have it in period underwear is because you don't want it to leak, right? And so this
absorb it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It's absorbent, and so it's going to hold that stuff there. And so, but the problem is that they're using suppliers, or they're using a third, like, right, there's some sort of, like, they think or they claim that they're PFAS free, but it's because they're not doing their own investigations and figuring out if their suppliers are actually telling the truth or not. Is that part of the story?
Yeah, so I interviewed a bunch of these clean CEOs that had no detectable PFAS, and that's exactly what they were doing. They were independently testing all of their fabrics for fluorine. And what was happening with the, I would say the better brands, the ones that had detectable fluorine, but it wasn't in like intentionally added levels, they were getting caught up by, you know, like if you're not producing your own thing, it's in a factory in India, and that factory in China or India, they're spraying down the equipment with a lubricant that has PFAS in it. And that lubricant, as it's staining and ironing and creating those fabrics, is leaving trace amounts behind. So when we tested, that's what we found were those trace amounts. And that can happen and there was also in the cleaners. So a lot of these manufacturers will have cleaners, and they'll clean out the vats in between the different, you know, clients that they have. Those will leave trace amounts behind in fabrics and cosmetics and those types of things. So I'm fine. I'm like a collection of knowing how all the different ways you could get PFAS into a fabric, into the cosmetics, into all kinds of things based on me just doing testing and then contacting companies and working with them behind the scenes to get them to reformulate and figure it out. We're also finding it in plastics. And this is one of the scary things. A couple of weeks ago, the FDA came out and said to food brands that if your polyethylene is fluorinated, you're basically breaking the law because there's no FDA review on fluorinated plastics. And they can do it to, technically they can do it to polyethylene, but they can't do it to polypropylene. So here I am behind the scenes testing as many brands, and I'm doing a lot of like ketchups and mustard and stuff like that.
This is their packaging that is the problem because of the type
and I'm finding it. And so for me, because, you know, when I do investigations, you know, we're doing cosmetics right now, and I'm doing only green beauty cosmetics. And the reason I'm doing cosmetics is one of my advisors, and I have a lot of advisors, by the way, a lot of very legit advisors. One of my advisors released a cosmetic investigation where they tested close to 300 brands. And these are the brands, beauty brands that you would get on Target or in Walmart, right? And you'd find those brands. Well, my people don't care about any of that stuff. They ain't gonna buy it because it's conventional, right? So I'm like, well, what about the green beauty brands? And there's no answer because they didn't test that. So I'm going to start testing. So I have been testing green beauty brands for 4 months, and I've tested 23 so far products. I have another like 27 or 30 at the lab. I buy things like crazy, send it off to the lab. And what I found is there's a lot of contamination in the green beauty world, and it's unintentional contamination. It's contamination. It's not intentionally put there because of the levels. And so as I'm finding this, I'm reaching out to these brands that are super low levels or have like one product that's non-detect and one product that has detect. And I'm saying, yo, I am going to post this. You have this timeline. Get motoring, and like light a fire under their ass. And we've actually had.
I'm sure they're all happy to get this news from you, right, Leah?
No, they're not happy to get this. They hate me, actually. Well, I mean, it's a love-hate relationship. It's
well, it's, you know, don't shoot the messenger, right? Like, you didn't put it in there, they didn't put it in there, but now that they know about it, it's sort of incumbent upon them to
Right.
move forward and make those changes. So we could talk, of course, all day about these things, but I want people to know, if they want to know what's the best non-toxic cookware or mattress or period panties or whatever that might be, how do they find you? How do they get a hold of you?
So if you go to mamavation.com, MAMAVATION.com, you go to that website, and then you literally put anything in the search you can think of, and it will come up with all kinds of investigations. You can also go where it says start here on the website, and it literally has all these things where you start product investigations. If you are really just interested in finding out different products and investigations, click on product investigations, and there is a list that will like blow you away of how many things that we've evaluated.
Toothpaste. And here's the thing, you are independently funding all of this. You're not taking money from industry because you want your test results to be untainted. However, it does cost a lot of money to get these done. So is there a way that people can support you in these investigations because they're so important?
Yeah, so we do accept donations. Unfortunately, they have to get into the Mamavation Facebook page for me to give them that, you know, information of how to donate to me. So if you are interested in doing that, we do take donations. We do raise money, but most of the money does come from me. I think it was like this year alone, I've spent $10,000 on lab fees, and that's not even including buying the products myself.
Right, because you buy them yourself.
It's good karma. You know, it goes out into the world, it comes back, and it comes back and blesses my family and blesses us in other ways. So I'm very happy to do it, but we do accept donations, and it's really appreciated because then I can always test more things. Right. And sometimes we do have like we're doing something on fitness and we're doing something on sports bras right now. And that is actually paid for, but it's not paid for by brands. It's paid for by NGOs and different types of organizations that aren't really profiting from this at all, but have a vested interest in cleaning up the industry. So I do take donations from NGOs and those kind of organizations, but I just started. That's not that $10,000. That's just me working out stuff. And I think I think we raised $1,200 just recently. I just started fundraising with Mamavation, and we raised $1,200 just like that because everybody benefits from what I do. We did period underwear, and I was able to tell them the 6 to now 7 period underwear brands that do not have detectable fluorine in it. You know, that's worth. And then, you know, cosmetics we're working on. I also have done parchment paper. So we tested all the biggest parchment paper, and we know what the 3 are that don't have detectable PFAS. We're doing athletic pants, sports bras. I did bamboo flooring. That was the other thing, because I had to do bamboo flooring in my house. And then everyone's like, oh my God, what do I do? So we tested 8 bamboo flooring companies to find out which ones were not using PFAS. So it's like what we're doing at the community, when I do these investigations, they're based on the need. It's not based on what I can do. It's based on what's needed to happen. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when we do these investigations, I got to do hours and weeks of interviews with experts. And one of the other things that I like so much is I have so many advisors that don't want to be affiliated with me. And what that means is they work in the industry and they're outing everybody, but they don't want to have their name attached to it. And that I have a lot of those types of advisors that are just like throwing it in my lap and saying, I don't know you, you know what I mean? And then I have to independently go and verify things, you know, interview stuff, check out the packaging, check out stuff, do testing and all that. But those are some of the best things. And we had that happen in like, alcohol brands have thrown those kind of things in my lap, you know, different cosmetic brands have like thrown things in my lap, you know, just for me to know. And I investigate a lot of it. And, you know, if it's something that people will really care about, I'll totally act on it. But if it's something that it's just going to, you know, make them put them in a better spin, I don't really follow up on that stuff. So it kind of depends. But
so you're filtering out those requests. You're doing the ones that resonate with your community and that you can independently verified. So you're not just like a mouthpiece for anyone. You're this important filter.
And to give you an example of that, so we did period pea protein the other day, and I partnered with the Detox Project. The Detox Project, they certify food as glyphosate residue free. And so we tested together, oh God, I can't remember how many things, but we looked at all the pea protein brands. And one of the brands was a brand that I had worked with a lot in the past. Their name was Orgain. Orgain Organic Pea Protein had higher rates of glyphosate than the conventional brands. And so this is one of those times where I'm like, sorry guys, I threw it up there. I'm like, y'all gotta get better. And until you do, there's no in my community. You can't be in ShiftCon. You can't be in our universe until you fix this up. But as that was happening, it basically changed what was going on behind the scenes, because the USDA got a hold of it. They freaked out. They got a hold of the lab, found out that, yeah, this lab is legit. It was all it's by the organic industry. And what was happening is that the pea protein industry at that time didn't have any manufacturers that weren't in China. They were all in China. And the Chinese manufacturers were cutting things with regular pea protein, right? And then just kind of basically lying about it and sending it to the United States. And because the USDA wasn't checking, it was getting through. And at the same time, what was happening is Europe and Asia, they were really cracking down on, organic standards. And the Russian mafia was involved in this as well, which is bizarre. But the Russian mafia, they were all the stuff they used to send to Europe, the fake organic in Europe and Asia, was now coming to the United States. And so that was part of the whole problem. Well, as we did our investigation and we tested a ton of these brands, Orgain was the worst one. They got a big, black eye, but then things changed. Because as that was happening, there was another plant in Canada that was coming on board. So within a year, this Canadian manufacturing plant came on board, and all the organic brands went to this Canadian pea manufacturer, and it basically cleaned up the system. And then I tested Orgain I want to say a year and a half later, and they were completely free of glyphosate. So
well, and I think the lesson here for the brands is don't just trust what your suppliers are saying. Do your own research and then confront them if it's not the right product, or find a different supplier. And that way you take full responsibility for your product, as opposed to being like, oh, well, they said, right? And so it's unfortunate, again, that that's the world we live in, but that is the world we live in, right? People are going to try to take shortcuts and maximize their profits, because that's capitalism.
Well, it already happens on the back of other countries making their standards more strict.
Right.
So as an American brand, if you're not assuming that you've got to check, you're kind of not using your brain, because Europe checks, they're testing, Asia checks, they're testing, the Middle East is even starting to do this. And we're left like,
why is America so far behind? What's the problem? Why can't we?
It's not so much the organic industry, because, the Organic Trade Association has been trying for years to get this to happen, but it all has to do with Congress, and it all has to do with the USDA. And so you can have these things you can have rules in place, but if USDA isn't funded, then they can't really do the job. So it's behind the scenes, there's all these politics that are happening.
Well, they keep trying to dilute organic standards, right? They keep trying to put more and more chemicals approved for organic certified, which just again confuses the consumer, because
the organic industry wants it stricter and stricter and stricter, and they keep suing and fighting and suing and fighting. At the end of the day, the brands have to take control, and that's really what has to happen. And so you're really protected more. It's not that organic food is bad. I've tested a lot of it, and most of it is fine, but there's certain things that you'll find issues with. It used to be pea protein. You'll find some things in oatmeal and those.
What about the gelatin? And did you look at gelatin? I feel like, or is that not true?
Oh, collagen.
Yeah, collagen. That's what I mean.
Collagen was interesting because organic brands, or a lot of the organic brands that had collagen, had high levels of heavy metals in their collagen. So it was really difficult to find something that's quote unquote safe, and having all the things. So the collagen that we recommended, we had pesticide tested, also tested for glyphosate, and then we tested it for phthalates as well, which is a plasticizer that gets into a lot of these things. And that was the brand that we recommended, because now I'm at the point where I'm really not going to recommend something as a featured unless I've tested it, and figured all that stuff out. Because
go to the blog and find out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm just a pain in the butt.
I love that though. You're an important pain in the butt. And we need people like you who are warriors for transparency, who are champions of health, because again, as consumers, it's so like we're trying to live our lives. And then here we are tasked with trying to, discern what's true and what's not true. And, this is convenient and easy, but then there's a negative payback on the other end. And, because we've been programmed into thinking cheap equals good, we end up with a lot of unintended consequences that we suffer later in life. And so the sooner we can prioritize quality over quantity, I think everybody's just going to feel a lot better. But it's challenging because then you get into the whole economics and those kinds of conversations. And so we're not going to untangle all of that right now, but your work is so important and people need to know who you are. That's why I wanted to invite you here today. And we're also doing a giveaway. So we are going to give away Leah's book. She's going to give a signed copy. Is it hardcover? Is that right?
Yeah. I'm sorry, what?
It's a hardcover?
It's a hardcover.
Yes, it's called Green Enough. And so this is going to give anybody who wants to know where to start. Give them that opportunity to start. And like you said, there's so many shades of green on the spectrum, and we all have to start somewhere. And so having this resource is going to be really valuable. We're going to drop the giveaway details in another post, but I just wanted to say again, Leah, so grateful to have you here. Love calling you a dear friend, and know that we are working together for transparency and connection, and just helping people live a healthier lifestyle through the work that we do. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. It was an honor to be here.